So in Euromonitor, we've adopted 5 pillars towards our new hybrid working model. We've always been ahead of the curve in terms of work-life balance and flexibility. However, the pandemic meant that some of our competitors were starting to catch up with us a little. So it was really important as a business that we continued to be ahead of competition and doing things which were actually moving forwards rather than just doing the same as others. We have 5 pillars within our new policy. The first one is that all employees, regardless of role, can work from home 2 or 3 days a week. We truly believe that having that balance between home and in the office is a better balance because we can divide the types of activities which are more conducive to the environment which we're in. The second pillar is around a reduction of our core hours. We've always had core hours of 10 till 4, which means people have been able to choose their working hours outside of that. We've reduced that to 11 till 3. Quite a lot of that thinking was because significantly more employees were working from home, and many of those employees are parents, and the ability to be able to finish at 3 makes a significant difference in terms of them being able to balance their work with their parenting responsibilities. What that means is that we will only put internal meetings in between those core hours of 11 till 3. Those are the only hours which we need people to be available, and people can do their other hours in the day at any time of the day which best suits them. We all have a preferred working mode. I personally work much better very early in the morning and then I have a slump later on. Other people have the reverse of that. So people can choose to work at times which work better for them, either personally or simply due to when we have our varying energy levels in the day. The third pillar we have is summer Fridays. So for 2 months of the year, it means we were able to kick off early on a Friday. We always place it according to the main school holiday of the location. So the Northern Hemisphere is that July, August time of the year, and our Southern Hemisphere offices are taking advantage of that between December and February, depending when their school holidays hit. It is an opportunity for people to really be able to start their weekends early and just be able to feel as though they have a little bit more time to refresh and extend their weekends. Our fourth pillar, which I have to say is my personal favourite, we trialled it during the pandemic and it was so successful it's now a permanent policy, is meeting-free Fridays. What this means is we will not have any internal meetings on Fridays. People still get in contact with clients, we still speak to our customers. However, internal meetings don't take place on Fridays. The way in which this works is we very much drive it from the top. So the leadership team are absolutely spearheading this as an initiative. And again, it was just in response to the fact that when we all moved to working from home a lot more, we found that we were spending disproportionate amounts of time in meetings. We were spending disproportionate amounts of times on Teams calls. And actually, it's quite difficult and it's quite relentless to be working in that environment 5 days a week. So we felt it was important on a Friday that people could actually go to their workplace and have a free day in which they could really think about spending time on longer term projects which need a little bit more concentration without this constant interruption and need to attend calls on an ongoing basis. And then the fifth pillar of our new flexible working, we call it working from anywhere, which means we allow employees to work from anywhere in the world for 15 days a year. So it means that people who have friends and family overseas are able to spend more time with those friends or family, or alternatively, people are simply able to extend a holiday, spend longer in that location and just work some days from there. Because of the restrictions on travel at the moment, people aren't extending business trips. However, we would hope and expect that in the future, when people go on to business trips to interesting locations, it will give them the opportunity to extend their time in those locations without having to use all annual leave for that additional time when they're overseas. It's probably been the most popular of the new benefits across the employee group as a whole, and has already been extensively used by a number of people. So we started with our employee engagement survey. It's a survey which we run on an annual basis anyway, and what we were able to identify was that actually in the area of work-life balance, where we had always come out very well, it slipped a little because people were comparing our offering to the offering of others. And it was almost our kind of pre-COVID offering with the post-COVID offering of other organisations, which really made us focus on, okay, we need to stay ahead of the game here. What can we do to make sure that we continue to be seen as a market leader in terms of work-life balance? What we then did is we actually engaged one of our own consulting groups. We have a consulting arm to our business who are normally looking at consumer trends. So we actually brought on board one of our, quite a senior person within our consulting group, who then engaged with 15 individual on the ground analysts, one in each of our locations, who gathered intelligence and gathered data, a combination of what our competitors were doing, but also what the market was talking about. So we had a report given to us through our own consulting group, which spoke about the types of benefits which were being looked at across businesses which were similar to us in our locations. What was quite important to us, though, is that we had a single offering for all of our staff, regardless of location. So whilst it was quite an education for some people in our APAC offices to try and understand what these summer Fridays were, for example, whereas in the Chicago office, it was something that was a very known benefit that they knew many of their friends or their colleagues or in previous workplaces had been able to enjoy. So some of it was about trying to adopt benefits which were already known in one location, but actually adopting it across our whole global workforce. What we tend to find is a lot of employees who work for us speak about enjoying working for us because we're a global business and because they're treated as a global employee, and then not just segregated into how their location would normally work. It's a real attraction for them. So as I say, once we had the consulting group pulled together a very detailed report, we looked at how we could continue to be best in class. So examples that came out of that consulting exercise, we were trying to take the gold standard of each of those. Of course, as a leadership team, we still had to really think about, okay, practically, how does this work for the business? Will there be any impact on productivity? Will there be any downtime? How do we manage that process? But actually, with the 5 pillars which we came out with, we're confident that actually productivity will improve because employees are so engaged and are so excited by these opportunities that actually they want them to work. The other thing which we did as well, which we always do, is we put everything on a trial. So we always try things out. We're very, very transparent with employees. You know, we told them we were doing Summer Fridays for the first time this year, and it was a trial. And therefore, at the end of the summer period, when it had concluded to be a success, we then said, okay, it worked, we're going to put this in permanently now. But employees knew as we were going through that it was a trial. So it was almost that kind of try before you buy type concept of we make sure things work first. And it also then gives you the ability to be a little bit more brave because of the fact that you do have this right to review and analyse and then look at how we can make changes. Really great examples of the way that our different offices are looking at the working from home opportunities. Some of our offices are saying, you know, we need you in 2 days a week and it's these 2 days. Others are saying, come in 8 days a month. You can choose your days. They're trying different ways of working. And we will always engage with employees to make sure that anything which becomes a permanent arrangement is something that they agree was the best solution. I mean, if we're starting to look at where we think some of the gaps are and maybe areas that we need to focus on more than maybe we used to in the past, I mean, the group of people really that first come to mind are our new starters. And something that the last 18 months has taught us is that actually people that are new to the business are finding it significantly more challenging to become integrated into the business. So we've had to think very carefully about how we can enhance many of our online induction programs to try and address some of the gaps which used to be filled by simply being in the office together. So in terms of there's truly a piece of work to be done around ensuring that new starters to the business understand who we are, understand our culture, understand what we're about, really kind of buy into why this is a great place to work, which we used to be able to sell so easily through people simply being in our offices and feeling the atmosphere and speaking to people across multiple divisions. So there's that kind of group of people where we have worked very hard on trying to enhance a lot of our online induction, actually, to try and fill some of those gaps which used to be satisfied by people being in the offices together. The other area which we've spoken about as well is around the Mental Health First Aid Champion Network. We very quickly identified that actually when people are remote, it's much easier for them to hide, I guess, in a way, how they're feeling. And managers are only identifying it at a much later stage than they would have done previously. So as part of the training, we've really had to build into managers asking questions around, well, how are you? And it sounds like such a straightforward and simple question to ask. But I think because we became in such a routine of having Teams calls and having conversations about product and about process, we forgot that the human element of being a manager is so important. So a lot of the hybrid management training and also the work of our mental health first aiders is very much driven around ensuring that managers are asking those questions about how are you? No, really, how are you? Really trying to focus on if there are things which are happening that we can maybe help support them, or actually try and maybe just alleviate some of those pressures. When somebody's in the office and they're feeling pressurised from work, it's very easy to pick up on that very quickly. It's very easy for a team around them to kind of all jump in and help out. When somebody's feeling slightly overwhelmed from work when they're sitting at home, that support network simply isn't there. So we need to be asking deeper questions to make sure that people are feeling that they have that same level of support. I'm looking at the 3 steps to implementing hybrid. I think the first one has to be, it's actually not about listening to employees, it's about getting employees involved. Because there's one thing to listen to employees, but it's far more powerful to actually bring them in and get them truly involved in kind of driving the ideas around what matters to them. But ultimately, what you're trying to do is you're really trying to ensure that you create a policy that fits your employee base the best way. And that isn't necessarily something that works for another organisation. It's something which is unique to you. So get people in, but get them involved. Get them actively involved. Ask them to do some work on it, because that way they will be far more they will feel empowered, but also they really then have a vested interest in making it work because it was their idea. The second piece would be really don't generalise. A few times I've had people come up to me and they feel as though certain policies have been put in place just for certain groups of people. You know, it's too easy to assume that it's the working parents that, you know, want to finish at 3 when they work from home, and that's just not the case. So really try not to generalise, try not to think about, well, this group of people will want this. Make sure that whatever you're offering, you offer it to everybody, which is exactly why we have a global policy, and regardless of location, you'll actually have the opportunity to be involved in all of the 5 pillars of our working practices. We haven't segregated different groups of people to benefit from different areas. And then finally, be brave. Don't be scared to try it. Tell people you're trying it. Don't be scared to try something. Talk quite candidly about, we're going to give Summer Fridays a go this year. We're going to measure it. We're going to see how it works. And if it's a success, then that will be what we do going forwards. Because I think far too often we're too nervous to try something because we think it's going to create a permanent change in our relationship. You just need to be really honest with employees and say, we really think this will work. We really want it to work. We're going to try it. And if it is a success, and this is how we're measuring it, then this will become permanent. And I think if you can just be a little bit brave in some of those ideas, what you will always find is employees want this to work and will do everything within their power to make it work. Working for an organisation which we're very privileged to have some very intelligent people working for us, people want to work for us, they will really try to do everything to make this flexibility work, because they also want it. They can see it benefits the business, they can see it benefits them, they can see it benefits attracting new talent, they can see it benefits retaining talent. And for all those reasons, we need to just sometimes step outside of our comfort zone, be brave, try something new, tell people it's a trial, and then if it's successful, then you can embed it into your normal way of working going forwards.